Why would you have a negative ANA and a positive individual antibody like an RNP? Let's talk about that. So I did a previous video where I talked about the different types of testing for ANA, HEP2, IFA, which is an immunofluorescent assay, and an ELISA test. Go back and watch that video, except for the one thing that I did kind of fuck this up, which is the specificity and sensitivity. I'll go through that here. All right, so ultimately, when we run an ANA, this is a group of antibodies. So a group of antibodies that includes antibodies like RNP, double-stranded DNA, SSA, SSB, so on and so forth. When you run an ANA, we most commonly run what's called a HEP2 IFA or an immunofluorescent assay. That result is going to be produced as a titer, 1 to 80, 1 to 160, 1 to 320, that sort of thing. Okay? Then if that ANA is positive, it gets reflexed into a bunch of different tests for antibodies via an ELISA test. An ELISA test looks at the individual antibodies, so like the RNP, the SSA, the SSB, so on and so forth. But the difference of these tests is important when determining why we would just go straight to ordering an ELISA versus just running the ANA and then reflexing it. So an HEP2 IFA test is more specific, meaning that it is going to have fewer false positives. It's really kind of good for ensuring that when something is positive, it's like really positive. Where an ELISA test is more sensitive, meaning that it has a lot less false negatives, so that when it's negative, it's like really negative. Okay, so what that means is if you run an ANA, and it's kind of on the borderline, it is going to be more likely to have false negatives, meaning that this might be negative when this one might be particularly positive. But in short, what ends up happening is that if we have a really high suspicion of a certain disease, say lupus or mixed connective tissue disease, we'll run an ANA, okay, and that'll run through an IFA. And if that's negative, then in addition to that, we also run the ELISA testing for the individual antibodies we're looking for, SSA, SSB, double-stranded DNA, RNP, and we see if those are positive because this test is more likely to have false negatives, meaning that the negatives aren't necessarily accurate. So if it is that we really highly suspect a condition, the ideal way to do this is to run the ANA plus run the ELISA of the individual antibodies that you're measuring. And if these come back positive, you might put a little bit more weight on them to say, okay, maybe this disease is actually happening even though the ANA is coming back negative. So I hope that helps.